My colleague Tim said the words associated when people think of AI, they think of cautious, concerned, skeptical. Meanwhile, if you invested $10,000 in NVIDIA 10 years ago, it's worth almost $3 million now. It's like the marketplace doesn't seem so cautious and skeptical. So who's actually using AI to get things done, to enhance performance, improve productivity, ROI? To my far left, I'd like to welcome Art Yu from Lenovo, Shubha Mohan from Invesco, Jason Porter, AT&T, and Neeraj Tolmare from the Coca-Cola Company. So Jason, I'll start with you if that's okay. I'd especially like to hear in what ways is AI helping with the customer experience at AT&T? I'm learning to like chatbots, by the way.
There you go.
I'm really trying.
All right. Good. Well, first to your point about, who's using it and how important it is. I mean, at AT&T, we view it as essential. It's not a choice. You must adopt AI and now generative AI to thrive. It's going to be imperative. But to your specific question on the customer experience, so we're using it across every front of our engagement with customers. So we're rerouting our trucks differently. We're loading our trucks differently. When we go into a customer's home, we now understand their experience better, know them better, and we're able to serve them better. Now with generative AI, we're able to sit on top of every experience, whether it's field or care or sales, and no matter which experience they walk into, call, or are engaged with, they now are met with somebody who has all the same information, knows how to respond to them, and improve their experience. So we're serving their needs faster. Even in times like tornadoes, hurricanes, natural disasters, wildfires, we're using generative AI and AI to understand the impacts, where our customers impacted, and how to most rapidly respond to get them up and restored quickly. So really across our entire customer engagement experience, we're using AI and now implementing Gen AI to improve the experience.
Are customers expressing satisfaction? Are you
Absolutely.
guys retaining more customers?
Yeah. So, well, you saw our churn levels are at an all-time low, just reported in our last earnings. But also, when we survey customers after they've experienced an interaction with AI or generative AI, we're seeing significant NPS and eNPS, so employee NPS, at the same time, because this is a cultural shift internally as much as it is a technology shift. We've got to get agents and field reps and everybody else comfortable with using AI. And so as they're using it, now after an experience, we're seeing a 33% reduction in average handle time when we talk to a customer, and their customer satisfaction goes up significantly. At the same time, the employee satisfaction also goes up through the roof, which was really interesting for us because getting a customer care rep to adopt it was a challenge at the beginning, but now after they adopt it, they love it.
It's great. It's great. Neeraj, now everyone here, by the way, everyone's really a pretty serious engineer. You're a true Silicon Valley guy. How does a tech guy like you make himself useful at a soda pop company? No, really, how is AI helping Coca-Cola enhance or help customers decide what they want to drink?
Yeah. I think it was easy. Of course, I've spent more than 20 years in the Silicon Valley working for high-tech manufacturing companies, but I didn't just come to work for a soda pop company. I came to the beverage company,
yes,
the Coca-Cola Company. So it was a rather easy decision.
Absolutely.
But look, I think at the Coca-Cola Company, we keep our consumers at the heart of everything we do. We have been on an amazing journey for the past several years to modernize our legacy footprint. For a company that's been highly successful for more than 138 years, we did have a lot of legacy technology debt that we were carrying. So we invested heavily in the last few years in modernizing our legacy footprint. We were probably one of the first ones at scale 6 years ago to retire our data centers and completely move to the cloud. We were also one of the first ones at our scale to completely move our ERP and our transaction systems 100% into the cloud. Modernized our cyber stack, modernized our network around the world, and reduced our footprint of various technologies that we're using and consolidated it down to strategic platforms. This helps, being in a franchise model, helps connect with our bottling partners and bring the whole system to act as one system. So that in itself was a rather interesting challenge to take on. And then comes the world of AI on top of it. Our approach to AI has been, we've been pioneering in this space when we announced our partnership with OpenAI late 2022, when ChatGPT was not even a sexy word in the broader world. We were able to launch Coca-Cola GPT inside our protected environment much ahead of industry. So our approach to AI has been learn by doing. A lot of it is evolving. A lot of this technology is evolving almost on a daily basis. And the only way to is to learn about it is by doing things. So we have implemented AI and the generative aspect of AI around our enterprise, around our customers, and around our consumer approach. And we see tremendous value, even if though it's early days. I'll give you just one example on the consumer side of things. We have roughly 200 plus truly global brands, and an ability to create a hyper-local message with these brands is roughly about 1 million messages a day. And add the complexity of 130 plus languages and diverse cultural ethnicities around the world, it is quite complex to create that hyper-local message. There is no technology out there that will allow that other than AI. So we partnered, you may have heard recently, with the partnership that NVIDIA announced with WPP, our agency of choice. We have launched a platform called ShopX, where we have an ability to create content and distribute it widely across these various hyper-local message across the various outlets. We did a pilot where we created 20 assets and deployed 10,000 variations of those.
Wow.
And just in a short time, we saw 20% plus efficiencies, and we could do this 3x at the speed of which we were able to do in the old world.
It's far more efficient marketing.
Highly efficient, yeah.
It's extraordinary. Shubha, tell us, how is AI disrupting the financial services sector?
Thank you. So at Invesco, I think AI and generative AI is not just a technology, but we're certainly using it, I think, as a strategic catalyst to drive, operational efficiencies and change. And specifically, I think with generative AI, the ability to create, personalized experiences, improve customer experience, totally aligns with our mission, which is to be the most client-centric firm in our industry. Now, specific to AI and generative AI, I'd say maybe three-pronged approach. So one is, like maybe most people in the room, we love our co-pilots, so that's there. We are also taking a very measured approach to bringing in the plugins that our SaaS providers have. And then, similar to, I think, what Neeraj mentioned, and there was a bot called Sydney mentioned, we have Ivy, our own internal bot, again, powered by Azure OpenAI, our own walled environment where we are able to leverage our data. And we've got use cases in production. One recent success story that I'll share here is in our custom model business, creating commentary for our custom model business. Now, customization, we all love. You can customize shoes today. So model portfolios is just that. It's combination of tickers and weights customized to our clients. And this is a very rapidly growing business, set to double to $10 trillion globally in 2025. And we are having to create commentaries based off of the model performance quarterly. And this used to be 2 FTE, used to take 8 days, poring over spreadsheets, kind of exercise. And thanks to Ivy and being trained on our own data and our own prompts, it's now down to 2 days. And again, given the rapid growth in the space, we are not going to have to get new headcount. So that's an example of, kind of the optimization that we're seeing.
So you're using
the generative AI.
No, that's great. So you're using generative AI to create these reports on these custom funds.
Correct.
That are created for customers. And this is actually a question from someone in the audience, which I think applies. How do you ensure that the data is accurate and updated continuously?
So great question. In fact, I'd say probably the two biggest things that we had to work through. One was legal and compliance. So befriend them, bring them into the process early was the lesson we learned. And making sure that we had the guardrails in place to satisfy them, right? So always human in the loop is the first thing that I think was our biggest lesson there. And then the second one was working with the Enterprise Data Office to have these data integrity rules, making sure we had the data quality checks on our data before Ivy ran the commentary with that data was, again, part of the process that we had to build out.
That's great. Art, I want to get you in here. Talk about how AI is transforming the way business is done at Lenovo, but especially to the extent that you can, what kind of AI solutions are you guys developing at your company?
Yeah, we're actually having a lot of fun with AI, right? Because I think it's very serious. Caution, committees, governance, right? It's very, and so I think there is a fun aspect to it as well. Yes. For example, right, so Lenovo is in the middle of a transformation ourselves from just building product, right? Many of you are customers on ThinkPad and ThinkSystems, thank you. But we also are moving into services, right? And we have a solution that is around AI and quality. Right? So we're actually working with Lotus, the car manufacturer, around their manufacturing. And it started as some more traditional AI with computer vision and machine learning about defect correction and detection, and shifting that left so they could improve the quality all coming off of their manufacturing lines. That's one example. And on top of that, as Gen AI has come on the scene, we were able to augment that solution to help it be almost an accompanying manufacturing analyst, because then you can look at what are the preconditions that lead to errors. It's not just, oh, you made an error, please, someone help fix it. But it's over time, you get enough sample points, you can start reasoning over the data to see, oh, well, when these conditions exist, this is what's causing the error. And so it's not just, hey, we had 80% reduction in installation errors along the line that we could catch earlier. It was almost a digital companion for a manufacturing line. So things like that are pretty exciting. I'll take one more example. We also do work around device as a service and digital workplace, and we have an offering called Care of One, and it leans into the theme that we've covered here. Right? Neeraj mentioned it as well, hyper-personalization, because it used to be, sales executive on the road, let me get him a light and thin laptop. Right? We have someone who's an R&D engineer, heavy data work, let's get him a workstation. But that's pretty static, and so the future of this, especially with generative AI, is about how do we create hyper-personalized down to the person, because it's no longer a static profile that you pull from Workday and decide what's to recommend. You can say, well, where are you? How do you travel? What apps are you using? What's the status of your machine? Which services do you use? And we find it's one of those great things that from a cost to deliver this service, it's much better. And the experience as a user is much better. And so when you think about, and we've talked several times about employee experience, it's actually one of the win-wins that we can set up, where through the personalization, it's actually better outcomes, and I think some of this panel has covered that. It's better outcomes, and it's actually less costly to serve. And so you generate some of these exciting scenarios.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I think, Shubha, you mentioned this, and it sounds like you guys are using a combination of things that are created internally and software as a service, things that you are partnering with others with. What's the combination like, and how do you leverage software as a service, and how do you govern that?
Yeah, fantastic question. For us, I mean, obviously, this is something in real time we're struggling with: build versus buy. What do we go out and create? What do we think that we can create and is unique to us? Maybe, for example, our network data might be something that we have an LLM focused on managing and operating our network. Maybe we're best in class at that. So that's an area for us to go create and build. But in other areas, we're going to be competing with the market and the world's data, literally. And so how do you figure that? So our approach has been try to take advantage of the best opportunities in the industry. So when we built we call it Ask AT&T platform, we built it in such a way that we're not locked into any LLM. And in fact, you were asking about data validation and those kinds of things. What we're doing is we're actually testing each LLM constantly for the best possible response. And we may change by the minute or the hour which LLM we're using for each different kind of answer, because we're constantly seeking less hallucination, more accuracy, better experience, those kinds of things. So we've built that in, but I think it's a constant battle. Somebody, I think you mentioned, or maybe it was mentioned in a previous panel, about using all the existing tools that are out there. Some of those things are becoming very expensive to deploy, right? And so if you've got to sort of make decisions on where in your company you're going to use some of these tools and other places that you're not, so that it becomes efficient enough for you to be able to leverage it. So build versus buy is something that's not solved yet, in my opinion.
Well, one of the things I think that's very important that Jason mentioned is, and I have to hold my teams back, because earlier there was a question about common mistakes. I think we all run engineering orgs, and engineers love to build. And so my team, we're like, I'm going to fine-tune everything personally. Yeah. I'm going to build all the AI scaffolding myself. And it's like, why? Because they get excited about these things. And I think to the point, what underlies this, and it's important to emphasize, is that it's changing so quickly. As Jason said, I think we're strongly agreeing with making sure your team understands around the agility point and the outcomes, and that you position yourself on the architecture to take advantage of what's happening in the marketplace. Because and that's actually a mistake we made. In some cases, we overinvested, and then 1 quarter later, the next iteration of something online comes out, and you're like, that's way better than what we did. Let's just go use that. And so the team goes down that path once or twice, and they figure out, right, let's re-architect so we can do something that's much more responsive, where you get the best of the market.
Has anyone been, are any of your companies growing through M&A activity in the AI space? I mean, you can always break news here. We'd never mind that.
I mean, I can answer for our company, and I want to add an example that I think brings home the point that was making. But to answer directly your question, no, we're not. But the space is too early to really, it's evolving. We all are probably playing around with every LLM model that's out there. And it's evolving almost on a daily basis. So it's hard to say where the puck's going to go or where it's going to land. So I think the entire industry is going through somewhat of a experimentation, and it's going to land perhaps in some consolidation that may happen. So it's too early for us to really put a bet on one particular area. But the example I wanted to add, which brings home the point that both Jason and Arthur were making, for the Coca-Cola Company, what is interesting is we do things at scale. And I actually thought I knew scale when I was working for large companies in the Silicon Valley until I came to the Coca-Cola Company. We do 2.2 billion servings a day. Almost 1/3 of humanity physically touches our product on a daily basis. And our customers range from large retailers like Costco and Walmart to mom and pop outlets that are out there. So we have over 30 million outlets that we provide our beverages to. What we're trying to do, one of the areas we're experimenting with is what we call a suggested order. So by studying historical sales data at these outlets, by combining that with geolocation data, by combining it with weather-related data, at what time of the day the sales are for a particular type of beverage, we were able to predict what should be the next best SKU in the cooler or the shelf that's sitting there. We are already seeing between 3 and 6% uptick in the sales of that particular outlet because of the predictability that this brings in. And not only that, because of generative AI, we're able to customize a message down to that outlet owner, as opposed to before where we used to send a blast message. Now we can actually customize a message to them, and we're seeing an uptick of 30% of adopting and taking that content which is geared towards them, which wouldn't have been possible with any other technology in the past. So I think there's a lot of good things that can come with it. I know the earlier panels talked about the governance and all that. All that is good stuff. But I think if we focus on, while being responsible, if we focus on the true value it can create, I think we're going to be in a much better place.
Yes. And who can talk about ROI at this point? When people think about implementing AI strategies, are you seeing fast turnarounds on profit? Is it a long-term proposition? What's been your experiences so far?
I mean, I can tell you our experience. We're sort of we did an investment phase a couple of years ago to build our Ask AT&T platform. And this is the first year really of significant investment in transforming the company as a whole, right? We literally are making investments. Our approach has been plant a seed in every organization so that you can start to transform, gain advocates, create basically protagonists fighting for Gen AI in every business unit. And so we've made those investments now, and already we're seeing 2 to 3 times the return on that investment in year. So it's a very rapid return for us on this early one. And the interesting thing about it is, I talked about cultural transition. A year ago, we were having to kind of pull out ideas and try to go convince them, you need to go transform your business unit, look at these opportunities. And it was like a sales pitch internally. Now, fast forward a year, as we're looking at 2025 investments, we're getting inundated with requests coming from the business units because these little teams that we've planted in every one of these organizations, it is taking hold, and they are seeking out generative AI. They are believers now, and so it's really starting to transform the whole company with a massive ROI.
Yeah.
I'd probably echo that sentiment. I think something that we are now enforcing is there's too many ideas, so we need that exec sponsorship, right? Make sure that it's a top-of-house use case before we start implementing it, and backed up by both policy from the very top, generative AI policy, and training, again, across the firm. So both of those, I think, are fundamental to ensuring that we're investing in the right use cases.
Yeah, we did the same thing, sort of built a governance to go make sure we're going after the highest ROI, but also, as I mentioned, I thought it was imperative that we got every business unit contributing, and so sometimes we violated highest ROI to go after making sure there was something in every business unit, because ultimately I need every business unit to adopt. I can't just go after the big cost centers or the big revenue centers. I need to get finance moving. I need to get HR moving and transform. So now we've got that kind of context. So just
But you've built specialized committees that are comprised of people from these different areas, right? In other words, the engineers aren't sitting and waiting for the CEO or whomever who may not get it.
At least in ours, we've got a governance committee, but the governance committee has representation from the business leaders of all these important arms. So investments, legal, compliance, HR, finance, you name it. And they need to approve the use case, say, yep, this is what we want our group to be focused on before we go execute on it.
It has to be business unit led or it won't get adopted.
Correct.
Right? You've got to get the business unit to buy in. And so you need the business unit to bring the idea, to wrestle with it, figure out how they're going to drive the adoption. And in our space, they sign up for the cost savings and the revenue generation in their plan for next year. So they better hit.
There has to be incremental value creation. I think all of us are going from, at least for Coca-Cola Company, we went from a phase of what we called organized experimentation to now scaled opportunities that create incremental value.
Yes.
And that kind of addresses your ROI question, both internally, which ultimately will reflect how we do business externally.
Yes. So here's a question that someone in the audience handed to me that's related really to the earlier point we were talking about, build it or buy it. We are a $10 billion firm with 40 employees, and tech is not a priority for leaders. Wondering how these large enterprises will roll down technology to smaller, less technically knowledgeable clients. Is that something that's on the horizon for any of you guys?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. I think you can look. There's a very good book. It's a little bit dated at this point, but it's called, I think, The Big Switch by Nicholas Carr. Right? He's an IT writer. And so I think this question's a little bit like, well, when will electricity, right? If you kind of rewind it 130 years, when will electricity matter? Because it used to be you had like a VP of electricity at a company, right? And that was the centerpiece of your factory. And you could be someone in a smaller shop and ask, well, when's electricity going to come to me? I think the technology, so yes, it will absolutely come. Right? As the kinks get ironed out and as it becomes more out of the box and easier to access. We can see from the pace of improvement already it's becoming more accessible. We've talked about things that are explainability, observability, things that will make it more comfortable and easier for, or having easier on-ramps for the technology. And so I think that will be the natural progression of things. And I think it's kind of the bet of anyone in the room is that a 2-year, 7-year, 5-year journey, but it will come, in my view.
Yes.
And I think it's getting cheaper. And one of the earlier panelists mentioned small language models, domain-specific models. I think that's the future.
I was just going to add to that question, not knowing the industry. It may not be, instead of thinking what impact technology may or may not have to my business, if you rise above that and think of the role of digital, and if the role of digital is to make things simpler, easier, better, the customers that this business is dealing with, are they digitizing their business, which will then ultimately force that business to adopt the new ways of working? We're starting to see a lot of that in some of our smaller partners.
Yeah. Any words of warning, advice, lessons learned as people think about heading down this road?
One of the category errors that we made early on, and we've had to kind of work ourselves out of, is conflating value and productivity with the kind of bottom line and some of the more hard financial metrics. And what I mean by that is, very quickly after this came out, one of the calls I got from our CFO was, can we just exit half your team? Microsoft says you can get 50% productivity, so can I just cut your budget in half? I said, what are you talking about? But because those things get conflated, people think productivity, oh, I can take out expense. And I think at the end of the day, though, that will be something we all have to wrestle with. And I encourage everyone to get out in front of that by being thoughtful about what is value and ultimately how do you want to account for it. Great if I save 20%, but do I just take an extra hour for lunch with Shubha? Right? How do I know I actually got value for the company? It was productivity, right, as an operational metric. But then how do we ultimately decide and account for that with the company, I think is important to untangle. I
think AI needs to be looked at as it's enhancing human capability. It's perhaps accelerating capabilities that we don't have today. I don't necessarily see value in looking at it as replacing humans. It is enhancing human capabilities to do things more efficiently, do things better, and make life simpler, easier, better.
Yes.
I'd probably echo my earlier learning, befriend your legal and compliance friends, people like Hillary in the room, bring them into the conversation early and understand where they're coming from and build those guardrails, otherwise you're just going to be impeded later on in the process. The regulation is coming, especially in industries like ours, which is highly regulated. I think making sure legal and compliance is comfortable with what you're building is paramount.
Yeah, mine's the same as before. You know, it's a cultural shift as much as it is a technical shift. Don't forget about adoption, driving that adoption, getting buy-in from your team and from your customers. It's a very human shift as much as it is a technical shift.
So should every AI initiative have a kill switch before people start off? Should they have the ability to spike it and move on?
I think there should be a pivot switch. Like he mentioned, the build versus buy. You can build the best custom model commentary, but if FactSet comes up with something better and it's better for the customer, then yes, you've learned your lessons, but you pivot.
They should have a constant learning switch, not a kill switch necessarily. You got to keep evolving, keep learning. Don't just throw it away. Learn from it and grow, right?
AI for the sake of AI may not create value. I think if you lose sight of why are we actually using it, what does it truly solve for my business? It's going to be a different answer for everybody here in the audience, but I think if we can find your own answer of what AI should mean for your business, then there's less chances of getting distracted. I wouldn't go to a kill switch per se. I would rather focus on is there a value switch that needs to be turned on before you move forward.
Yes, that's great. Please give them all a round of applause. Thank you.